And staying with the Russian president, his bet on Ukraine is finally paying off. It's taken more than 600 days, but it is happening. Western countries are losing interest in the war. Their funding is about to stop. If it does, it's game over for Kiev. Let's start with their biggest supporter, the United States of America. They've given some $40 billion in military aid to Ukraine so far. That's $40 billion in 2 years. But US lawmakers say no more, especially the Republican ones. Joe Biden had presented a budget plan to the US Congress. He asked for $106 billion. It included funds for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Now, the Congress did give money to Israel, but on Ukraine, they said no. Republicans have been pushing an America First policy, meaning no spending on foreign wars. What does that mean for Ukraine's war effort? Well, a White House official has written to congressional leaders, and her warning is pretty dire. Let me quote, "If US financial support ends, it would kneecap Ukraine on the battlefield, not only putting at risk the gains Ukraine has made, but increasing the likelihood of Russian military victories. In simpler words, Ukraine will lose. And there is no backup fund for support. The Pentagon has used up 97% of its allotted funds. The State Department has used up 100%. So by the end of this year, aid will stop. There will be no more money to give."
Without congressional action, the administration will run out of resources by the end of the year to procure more weapons and equipment for Ukraine and to provide equipment from US military stocks without impacting our own military readiness. Congress has to decide whether to continue to support the fight for freedom in Ukraine as part of the 50-nation coalition that President Biden has built, or whether Congress will ignore the lessons we've learned from history and let Putin prevail.
Without US aid, it's just a matter of time. Kiev could fall within weeks or months, which brings us to two important questions. One, can Congress still strike a deal? And two, what about Ukraine's allies in Europe? Well, Congress can strike a deal. We've seen last-minute talks on debt ceiling. No reason the same cannot happen for Ukraine. Plus, the Republicans have shown their cards. They want tougher immigration and border laws. If they get that, they will greenlight the money. So it's a question of negotiating hard, a question of who blinks first. As for the second question, the answer is more complicated. In the US, you have to convince 2 parties. In Europe, you have to convince 27. That's how many members the EU has. And right now, they're negotiating a budget. It includes a $54 billion fund for Ukraine. It's a long-term fund. The idea is to keep Ukraine afloat until 2027. Just one problem, though. Not everyone is on board. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is opposing the proposal. He's pulling an Erdogan in the EU, using his position to gain an advantage. You see, Brussels is supposed to give $24 billion to Hungary. Orbán needs that money, $24 billion. But the EU leadership has put a freeze on it. They say Hungary has rule of law issues. Fix that first and then take the money. So what does Viktor Orbán do? He flips the strategy. He threatens to block the EU budget instead. It's a classic case of brinkmanship. But for Ukraine, it's a matter of survival. The winter has already set in. Russia has begun striking Ukraine's energy infrastructure. If foreign funding stops, Kiev will fall. And Putin knows this. In fact, he knew it all along. Putin was betting on Western support and unity to crumble. He was right about that. What he got wrong was the timetable. Does that mean it's game over? Well, today is the 5th of December. We have an entire month before time runs out. And in politics, 1 month can be a long time. The Congress could still strike a new deal. The EU could still accommodate Hungary. So the war is not over just yet, but it has exposed the drawbacks of this Western alliance, of how fragile the support is. The regime in Kiev should take note of that.